Mr. Chair. Thank you to all the panelists, especially my friend Stephen Walker, for being here today. I'll come back to you in a minute. But a lot of the discussion I've tracked has dealt with the consequences of the staffing shortages that has brought us to this point. My first question is in the spirit of a little bit of the problem solving. For years we know that BOP has been experienced a staffing crisis with the consequences both for correction staff as well as incarcerated individuals. And I know that there's officers from California facilities who regularly contact my office sharing what's going on in facilities throughout the state and sharing the frustrations that they face. So my question is actually for Mrs. White. What are the greatest barriers in your opinion, not just to recruitment and not just to retention, but also to morale of correctional staff, and what recommendations you have for how they can be addressed? You already started touching on it. It's more than just funding. So
Correct. So funding, in my opinion, is the biggest. Compared to Border Patrol or ICE, our officers make an average of $37,000 a year less. That in itself would be a morale booster to up their pay. But when we can address the pay issue and bring more staff on board. I started 20 years ago, and it was a great place to work. We had enough staff to do the vast majority of the duties that we needed to do. And that in itself, having people, we had, it was more like a family than a coworker. We had each other's back. We supported each other. If I was running behind, my coworker would help. We don't have that now because people are so frustrated. If I call in sick, it leaves someone to get mandated. And then they're angry with me. It doesn't matter if I have a sick child or anything like that. So I think the staffing, the effect it's had on the morale is huge. So getting the staffing back to where it could be would be my top priority. Outside of that, we do absolutely have to focus on wellness because as Mr. Walker was testifying to, the PTSD rate of correctional officers or correctional staff is far above, even studies show even higher than military, because we're exposed to inmates or criminals who have been convicted day in and day out. None of them are happy to be in the location that they are. Not all of them, but a vast majority of them are not pleasant to deal with. And we deal with that 5 to 7 days a week, 8 to 16 hours a day, depending on. So if we can up our wellness programs and get it back to more of a family where we support each other outside of the pay and increasing the staffing, I think those are the biggest things on our plate right now.
Thank you. Both your comments and your reference to Mr. Walker is a good transition to my next question. It's first is a comment from Mr. Walker, and he can respond or not respond, your choice, because it's good to see you again. The comment is this: I love you, brother. Thank you for being here. But let me tee up my question, because I made reference earlier that my office does hear from officers through facilities throughout the state. Just most recently, within the last couple of weeks, FCI Victorville and FCI Mendota visited my office to highlight how staffing shortages have compromised their safety, with specific examples, impeded their ability to fulfill their responsibilities, and of course negatively impacts their lives outside of work, not just inside of work, but outside of work, right? They described the emotional toll and strains on family that it causes, especially when it comes to mandatory overtime. Imagine those who are trying to make sure their young children are taken care of. We give example after example. So to address the staffing shortages, in addition to pay, to your point, Mrs. White, the Bureau must support its corrections officers by ensuring they have that sufficient time off and provide them with the necessary mental health and wellness resources that they need. So, Mr. Walker, you described some personal experience with the committee earlier in your testimony. Whether it's specific to the back-to-back mandatory shifts or anything else, can you give other examples of how the staffing shortages impacts officers' lives and wellness, and what other suggestions you have for the Senate?
Wow, that's a lot. First off, thank you, Senator, and I love you too, sincerely. Thank you for your friendship. The problem of wellness within corrections is that they treat it like it's a one-off. This is not, it has to be something preventative, and it has to be comprehensive, ongoing, continuous, because the environment that you're steeped in every single day is relentless in its assault. As Ms. White testified to, prisons are not happy places. No one wants to be there. So the ability to mitigate, to address the impact that you're walking into a place where your hypervigilance is continuously activated, and the amount of dopamine and cortisol and epinephrine and everything else is continuously flooding you, and you have no idea that that's happening. There has to be an education process to help you understand and to help your family understand the ramifications of that, so that you can create the preventative measures internally, externally, and personally, because there's no way you get away from it. And I know we're running over time, but there's a tremendous amount of work that has to be done, and we can't simply believe it's the blue pill and that we're just going to keep on in the excitement of existence in the system.
Right. Mr. Chair, I know my time is up. I'll just end with this comment because based on Mr. Walker's response and for consideration of the panelists and this committee, what is PTSD when there is no P? That's what you just described. Thank you, Mr. Chair.